screwing around and start!
Not so legendary Vio here. I'm going to be doing a Ritual Beast profile. My build's weird. It's a pretty basic build, but since I don't have E-Telly, I actually have a card in here that I'll tell you that you should be running E-Telly instead of. But this is the deck I took to locals. I got second place with it, which was fun. We don't have the biggest locals, but it was fun. I did well against a lot of decks like Yangzing and Yosenju and Bujin, stuff like that. I generally do well against, and so this is just it's a really fun deck. I have issues against certain decks, but that's just the problem with this deck is if you brick, and you basically brick by drawing. I don't know how to describe it, but without further, I'll explain as I get into it. But without further ado, let's start into the profile. I know I have a lot of other mats that you've seen, but I haven't used this one, and it's got a cute little fairy on it, so I decided to use this one. So starting off with the main guy, are 3 copies of Spirit or Ritual Beast Tamer. So they all have Ritual in their name, so some are Spiritual Beast monsters, and so this guy's a Ritual Beast Tamer. What he does is he allows you to do a second normal summon. And that is kind of one of the most important things about this deck. That extra normal summon really gets your plays off, and that makes him one of the best cards. I am currently playing 3 copies of Lara and 2 copies of Wen. So Lara lets you summon back from grave, and Wen lets you summon back from banish pile. The reason why I like running this is I prefer to have this number of the spiritual beast monsters, just because I feel like the 8 is good. When the new one comes out, Pilika, I'm removing 1 Lara for her just so I can have a 4th name in the deck, but I don't want to change the actual amount of Ritual Beast Tamers I'm running. Even though I do like this card art much better, I'll just bring it in for you a little bit. But what this card does is it just lets you go once you're winning, this is a win more card. If you're losing, this is a win more. So like, it's really interesting because the deck has ways to recover from any situation. If you have all your combo pieces out, Wen lets you win more. If you had to stall for a turn or 2, Lara lets you start winning. And if you open with Elder, you're in a good position. So there's that. We're moving on to the Spiritual Beast cards. So we're running 3 Kana. Kana is the most important one. You want to open with Kana. If you can, you want to open with Elder Kana because you can do great broke combos. If you guys want a combo video, comment in the comment section below. I will do one if it's requested. I've seen a couple other people do them, so I don't know if you need it. But if you want one, I will do it. There's a lot of silly combos this deck can do that just kind of help go plus in a bunch of situations. Oh yeah, by the way, his effect is a Gold Sark effect. So once per turn you can banish a dude. It'll come any card with Ritual Beast in its name, and it'll come to your hand in 2 turns. 2 copies of Rampengu. I was running 3 until just recently. I dropped it down to 2. The reason is this card, as much as you like opening it, it doesn't actually do anything for you except for get a lot of your cards banished that you don't need, and you don't need to open with it. You need to see a lot of the other cards first, and so I dropped him down to 2 because I was just getting him in too many dead hands, and you can't really use more than like 2. The thing about the deck is every monster can only be special summoned once per turn. So when you're looping through your contact fusions and such, you end up having extra dead cards, and Rampengu is that card, and his attack stat doesn't actually make up for having him in the deck at more than 2. We're running 2 copies of Apelio for his attack stat and his effect. His effect will not work on the ulti Apelio form, which is you can banish a card to gain 500, but it's cool because his effect is cost, so the banish is cost, allowing you to take a card from your graveyard and put it into the banish zone, which allows you to defuse, refuse, do stuff like that. I was able to win against, I think it was Yangzing, because they had, or even though they had a skill drain out, because most of my cards are based off of cost, so I was able to constantly tag out and resummon in different cards. Next card is Petalfin. I was running 1 for the longest time, but I recently brought it back to 2 because it is spot removal, and if you open that plus an Elder, it does the same thing that the other cards do, because Elder, normal summon Petalfin, banish a Ritual Beast card from your hand, and then you can put like a Vanities or something back on top of your opponent, or into your opponent's hand. That's good because what it does is it allows you to summon your fusions and stuff like that, and just start going off. And he also allows you to banish a card, which is really good. So those are the Spiritual Beasts. Those are all the regular archetype cards. I run a couple monsters that aren't though. So we're running 2 copies of Harpy Dancer. I was running 3. I got the 3rd one over here. But I'm not running the Gen X Ally Birdman because I didn't like synchroing in this deck, and I felt like I'd rather XYZ summon in any situation. And I'm not running the Mist Valley card. So why this card is good is during the opponent's end phase, since all of them during either player's turn can defuse, I like to defuse my card. And let's say I put this card and this card on the field. I can normal summon Dancer, put him in my hand, normal summon him, and then I can normal summon again, which just gives me a whole bunch of cards to work with that I wasn't able to use a minute ago. And having all these extra cards in play, and it's really good. But the problem was, I kept drawing it in sets of like 2 during the tournament, and I felt that I only needed 2 because her effect, without like a Mist Valley, her effect didn't do much else for the deck. So I felt she is much better at 2 for the deck. It's just more of a tech card. Then we have Tempest Dragon. Tempest is a really good card because it lets you just pull the craziest combos. If you ever ended up in a situation where you accidentally minused yourself to the grave, he lets you banish the cards back into the banish zone to be able to continue fusion and defusing. And also, if you get him banished using cards like Ghoul Sark, you can add Debris Dragon. Debris Dragon, summon him, pull back some of your tamers if you want them back to fuse with, or pull back a Petalfin, which is what I normally do. And since I have 2, the chance of me having one down there is really high, especially with the fact that the Rampengu will send it straight to the graveyard, and that's really good. So Debris Dragon lets me pull this back and make a free rank 4 on the spot, which is really good, and I prefer making rank 4s than to try and make synchros, and so I'm not running any synchros despite having the Debris. So there's that. That's the monster lineup. We're moving on to spells. We have 3 Upstart Goblin. This deck is, I think, a 41 or a 42 card deck. I'll have it in the description, the deck list. But do not run Upstart Goblin if you don't have to. E-Telly is a million times better. Every time you can E-Telly for a card, it would be better. So E-Telly for him, normal summon Dancer, put this in my hand, normal summon him again, normal summon again. It's really good. E-Telly really gets the cards where they need to be. Worst comes to worst, you can E-Telly during your opponent's end phase to banish a card that you can use again on your turn. It's really good because of that, but Upstart, what it did for me was after I would summon and after I would explode stuff, I would search through my deck, and after I was done searching through my deck, I could Upstart to draw some of my other tech cards that are not searchable, which are in the rest of the deck. So there's that. It also helped fix brick hands, but overall I would 100% say run E-Telly instead of Upstarts. That's a personal preference, I guess. You don't need 3 if you don't need it, or if you don't want to, but personally I prefer running 3, especially with my 8 I call them Charmers, but with my 8 Tamers, I like to have the 3 E-Telly. Next we're running 2 copies of Mystical Space Typhoon. You don't need a 3rd one. I have the 3rd one in the side deck. All your monsters dodge everything, which I can explain in a combo video if you want, but they basically, you don't have to worry about back row that much. This just stops cards that are problematic, like Vanities and such. So that's the point of the Mystical Space Typhoon. We have Book of Moon for that Trish lock, or whatever it is, for the Nikloth, that just the soft lock that makes it so you can't special. Book of Moon helps with that. We have 1 Foolish Burial and 1 Gold Sark. The Foolish Burial Gold Sark things, what they do for you is they are basically Rhoda. Foolish puts a card in the grave that you want. Gold Sark puts a card in the banish pile you want. You can put cards in the grave and banish pile based off of what you have in your hand. It's really good. So this is up to you if you would not run it, but I would almost say certainly you have to. It's just too good of a card. It's basically extra Rhoda for the deck. We are running 1 copy of Ritual Beast Bond. This card lets you fuse 2 cards in your hand into any card, or 2 cards on the field into any Ritual Beast card, ignoring the conditions. So all of them say 1 Ritual Beast and 1 Spirit Beast. So it's like you need a Tamer and a monster to create it. Well, this one lets you fusion ignoring that. So you can do huge damage. So you can have this card, and let's say this card out. Attack with all 3, activate the spell card, fuse these 2 into a 3rd one of him, and attack for game. And the way this deck works, because of the traps you're running, you have really good chances of that kind of doing that. So we are also running 1 copy of Snatch Steal, 1 copy of Raigeki, and a copy of Dimensional Fissure, because if your cards get banished, you're in a good position. You want your cards banished because that's where they're best. If D-Fissure or Macro was at 2 or 3 like they are in OCG, this deck would be phenomenal. We would be running 3 Wen instead of Lara because Wen's better in that sense. Normally I was running 3 Wen and 2 Lara, but I just recently switched back because you don't always open D-Fissure, and for some reason when you do, your opponent has the cards to cancel it. So you can't rely on D-Fissure and Macro as much. They're just to help hurt your opponent. On to traps. We're running 3 copies of Ambush. This is like Call the Haunted on steroids. It lets you summon from your graveyard or banish pile a Tamer and a Spiritual Beast monster. So it lets you pull out, let's just say, a Kana and a Lara, and you can get their effects on your next turn. You can activate this during your opponent's end phase of their turn. It's really good. You can only activate 1 ambush per turn, so some people have been cutting it down to 2, but personally I find 3 better. That's a personal preference, to be completely honest. I personally prefer 3 though. Just, it gets your plays going. Once your cards are in possession and going, this card really helps you out. Moving on, we're running 3 copies of Ritual Beast Steeds. This card is the best card. It may not be the best card in the deck, but it's one of them. So this card is Raigeki, so it lets me blow up cards on my monsters on my opponent's side of the field up to the cards I control without targeting, which is really cool. And I can use as many as I want in a turn, so I can activate 1, and if some of their monsters survive, I can activate it again. It's really cool because against like Burning Abyss, you flip up 1, pop their field, they summon more, flip up a second one, pop their field again, you've triggered all the effects of the dudes, and if you flip up a third one, they have nothing. You can successfully make them go minus by using enough of these, which is really cool, and with how searchable it is, it's amazing. Now we are playing 1 Warning into Macro. Macro and D-Fissure are very key for the deck because it just shuts your opponent out of plays, but it's really just kind of silly with how it works. So with this deck, cards that you could change, you can only, or you should be running E-Telly instead of Upstarts, but you don't need 3 if you don't want them. And most of it's just up to personal preference. A lot of people were running 1 MST instead of 2, but I prefer the 2 just because of the decks that I had to face. Moving on to the extra deck. This one I'll have to explain a little bit differently. So we are running 3 Ulti Apelio. He is immune to other cards when he declares an attack. So even if you give him an attack boost, when he declares an attack, his attack will drop back down to 26. I can see if I can get it to focus a little bit better. But they can all defuse during the opponent's turn or your turn whenever they feel like it, meaning that they can dodge so many crazy effects, and they are all contact fusion, so it's really cool. None of them have any summon limit, so you can summon them as many times as you can. It's just your monsters in here have limits to how many times they can be summoned, especially. This card is your main searcher card, so it says return 2 cards in your banished pile to your graveyard to add a card from your deck to your hand. There's a combo you can do with that. If you want the combo, once again, comment section, tell me to make the combo video. I won't make it if you guys don't want it or if you don't need it, but if you want it, tell me. This card lets you search for everything though. With this card being able to constantly tag out into the new guys and summon them multiple times, you can search 3 to 4 times in one turn, being able to just basically play new Infernities, as my friends like to call it, because I would just search 2 of this card and a Monster Reborn, or the Call of the Haunted Trap card, set them all, and then their turn they couldn't do anything because I could just keep blowing up their fields, and it's beautiful. The last one I'm running is 2 Dolphin, sorry. This is bad. I mean, I've summoned it once or twice just to evade cards like Raigeki and such. My opponent would go and they'd Raigeki my field, and I'd activate the spell card to fuse into this card during their turn, and I wouldn't lose anything. And, I mean, the card isn't bad. The main reason why I use it is for the Rampengu, allowing me to banish this to send to my graveyard my Dolphin. That is the main reason for it, and you never need the effect more than once. So, we run 1 for banishing and 1 to use, so that is all the fusions. When the new fusion comes out, I'll be running 2. I already had that planned into the extra deck. The deck really likes the new guy. 3,200. He gains a 500 boost, so that's 37. If you summon him the regular way, which is really easy to do because Kanahawk, just all the pluses, and then you can just out of nowhere pull him out. You can just basically infinitely Quasar on your opponent's turn as many times as you want, and every time you do it just makes you go more plus, so yeah. Next we were running 2 Chidori. Chidori is a good card for the deck because you can make it with Debris Dragon. It's really easy to pull the cards out, and because we are running the 2 copies of Dancer, it just is really easy to get the Chidoris. I've made this card, I think that was the only XYZ I think I made the entire tournament. This card was great. It pops face down cards and face up cards. It's really good because of that. Moving on to the other cards, we have Abyss Dweller, we have Castel, we have Shark, we have Direwolf, and Cowboy. There's no real reason for these. I actually made none of these the entire tournament, except for Chidori. I made every one of my fusions during the tournament. I think I actually did summon every single one of these, so one duelist would summon 3 of each, and then the only one I didn't summon was the one Petalfin I banished. The deck does a really good job of cycling those. I do have a side deck that I used. It's nothing impressive, but it's what I used. I had a Scarecrow. I never sided that. 2 Flying C and 2 Max C and 2 DD Crow. I never sided those in. There was never a need to because the deck has such a strong main deck with like Macro and D-Fissure acting as side deck cards. The 3rd MST, I didn't need that. 2 Diffusion. No one was playing Shaddoll, so we didn't have a reason for that, but I did side in Prohibition. I lost to a Burn deck. I lost to Volcanics, and it was a really close game. I almost pulled it out at the very end of the duel, but I was 1 card short of being able to do it. So I had banished, just for a really quick explanation of what happened, I had banished a Kanahawk using Kanahawk's effect, and if I had been able to go off on the turn before this returned to my hand, I could have exploded and won the duel, but this card was in the banish pile, and on my next turn it came to my hand, and I was unable to summon Wen to get its effects, and I had to wait just long enough for it to be less useful. But Prohibition, I used that, called the Blaze Magazine, and he couldn't do much until he finally got rid of it. Soul Release, I used that one time, and then the 2 Shadow and the Light Mirror. I didn't really need these cards, they were just there. The side deck doesn't matter that much because your main deck is such a good counter to all the basically the decks out there. Sorry the sleeves were all in different colors. I just unsleeve and resleeve when I'm at a tournament, so or when I'm at locals, so there's that. The deck does really good. It's got really good matchups. The first couple turns with this deck are a whole lot of nothing. This was a long profile, but I wanted to explain all the cards in it. It's a deck that I really enjoy. I believe it's 42 cards, and don't run Upstart. That's something I would like to say. It hurt me during one of my duels against the Burn guy because I gave him the extra life points, and he was sitting there. I think it was like 250 life points at the end of the game, and I couldn't poke over that. And so it was all because of the Upstart. Make sure you're running E-Tellies, or just don't run something there instead. There's plenty of other cards you can run, but the Upstarts was kind of annoying. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and all of that. I am glad you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, remember to hit like, hit the comment button down below, and type me something nice or something you'd like to think. And as always, have a wonderful day. Yeah. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe, and make sure to comment down below. If you want to watch our other channels, click the jellyfish to watch Blue play games such as Binding of Isaac Rebirth, or click the butterfly to view our new channel where I will talk about random anime, gaming, or silly top 10 topics. Thanks for watching, and as always, have a wonderful day. Yeah.